Conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron on Saturday, with the two leaders agreeing to work together on the crisis. In a statement, the White House said the two discussed the need to confront the increasingly dangerous situation associated with North Korea's destabilizing and escalatory behavior. Hours earlier, Trump spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping. China, while pushing for a denuclearized Korean peninsula, again called for restraint. President Xi Jinping has repeatedly urged the United States and the DPRK to tone down the rhetoric and work toward a diplomatic resolution. China says that Trump fully understands China's efforts to resolve the crisis, and the two nations are pledging to keep in close contact on major international and regional issues that affect the two superpowers. Amid this backdrop of the U.S. asking Beijing for its help in trying to defuse the tension with Pyongyang, Trump told President Xi during their phone call that he is ready to sign an order Monday, launching a review of China's trade practices. The United States is concerned China is violating policies protecting U.S. intellectual property, an accusation Beijing has denied. The pending U.S. investigation is important because it could open the door for Trump's efforts to impose punishing tariffs against Chinese imports. Experts say that could be a game changer in efforts to reshape trade deals between China and the United States, the world's two largest economies. There are reports that Trump was prepared to announce the investigation about a week ago, but he held off in an effort to win support from China for stronger UN sanctions against the DPRK. Sean Caleb's CGTN in Washington.
노동계급과 증명원들의 회가 11일에 진행됐습니다. 집회들은 천만이 총폭탄대와 노래 추악으로 시작됐습니다. 청년 전의들의 집회에는 조선노동당 중앙위원회 정치국 상무위원회 위원이며 조선민주주의인민공화국 국무위원회 부위원장이며 당중앙위원회 부위원장인 최령해 동지와 관계부문 청년동맹의 일꾼들, 청년학생들이 참가했습니다. 조선민주주의인민공화국 정부 성명을 전용남 청년동맹 중앙위원회 일비서가 낭독했습니다. 집회에서는 연설들이 있었습니다. 먼저 서송역 청년동맹위원회 일비서 신철이 연설했습니다. 계속해서 연설자는 이번 대륙간 탄도로켓 화성 12차 시험 발사는 무모한 군사적 모험과 제재 책동에 매 미국에 보내는 엄중한 경고로서 세계 평화와 자주를 지향하는 전세계 진보적 역량에게 커다란 고무적 힘과 신심을 한 선군 조선의 일대 시위이며 민족사적 대경사라고 말했습니다. 전체 청년동맹 일꾼들과 청년 학생들 어머니 당에 드리는 노래를 심장으로 부르며 백두산 대국의 영원한 승리의 기시이신 경의하는 김정은 원수님께서만 긴 조국 통일도 사회주의 한국 건설도 문제없다는 절대불변의 신념을
Well, first of all, the tension is rising dangerously on the Korean Peninsula with the United States, including its President Donald Trump and the regime in DPRK publicly engaged in this tirade, shouting about war against each other. This is very dangerous and this needs to calm down. Secondly, I think the talk between President Xi Jinping of China and President Donald Trump of the United States is very encouraging. That means there is the channel of communication between China and the United States, and the leaders can talk freely about how to deal with the DPRK nuclear weapon program and the launch vehicle program. Thirdly, I think at this particular moment, restraint is really required, and the United States really should avoid sending the wrong message of burning all the bridges for the eventual negotiation, and also avoid sending out the very confusing messages. President Donald Trump is talking about one thing, Secretary of State Tillerson is talking about very, very different things, and their messages need to be reconciled. We all want to achieve the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, but major powers like China China and the United States need to be on the same page and talk about this very dangerous situation more or less in the same tone, because otherwise you really will have a situation where DPRK will go further and further in the direction of nuclearization and militarization of the warhead.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about being on the same page, as you say. If the U.S. were to attack North Korea first, China would defend North Korea. If North Korea were to strike the United States first, China would remain neutral. In neither of those two scenarios does China support the U.S. What are we to make of that and the perception of China as an honest broker in all of this?
No, first of all, I think it's too early to speculate about a military attack by the United States against the DPRK. I think there is still much room for negotiation and diplomacy. I don't think President Donald Trump or the U.S. government have reached the conclusion that they want to be prepared for all the consequences that may come out of a military attack of the United States against DPRK. That military attack will really be very, very traumatic, and eventually the consequences may be much worse than whatever we have today. And I think President Donald Trump and the U.S. government, the U.S. Military really need to think twice before they go into that very dangerous direction. Secondly, I think we all need to continue to work with DPRK, continue to put the pressure on DPRK, and try eventually to convince it out of this nuclear weapon program, because for DPRK to have the nuclear program is the wrong thing, and we need to stop them from doing the wrong thing again and again. I'm personally confident that if all the countries, especially China and the United States, do the right thing, we can achieve that goal eventually.
We are unfortunately out of time. Good to get your thoughts on this. Thanks very much for being with us.
And if he utters one threat, or if he does anything with respect to Guam or any place else that's an American territory or an American ally, he will truly regret it, and he will regret it fast.
Trump tweeted the U.S. Army is locked and loaded against the secretive East Asian state. It's the latest in a long line of rhetoric from the American leader.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. The people that were questioning that statement, was it too tough? Maybe it wasn't tough enough. It's not a dare, it's a statement. Has nothing to do with dare. That's a statement.
While it's still a war of words for now, Western media report the Pentagon has plans for a preemptive strike on North Korea's nuclear facilities. But that's raising fears across the border in Seoul, as Ilya Petrenko explains.
So what if Mr. Trump goes for it and all these roughly 24 North Korean missile launch sites, testing grounds, and other facilities go boom? There is no way Kim Jong-un won't take revenge. What are they going to aim at?
If they invade North Korea's sovereignty and dignity, our army will launch the merciless ultra-precision strikes from the ground, air, sea, and underwater. So they'd better stop being reckless.
And even without the stuff Trump wants to wipe out, they got quite the arsenal to unleash hell over the 38th parallel. For decades, North Korea has been prepping artillery for that very moment. And now what they got loaded and ready to fire are 12,000 pieces of tube artillery and 2,300 units of multiple launch rocket artillery. The direction southward is clear. Where precisely will Kim point the crosshair? Here are two words for you to learn: counterforce and countervalue, targeting South Korean and possibly even U.S. military facilities near the demilitarized zone versus an attack to destroy economically critical infrastructure and to cause immense civilian casualties. I mean it when I say immense. Look at the range of North Korean artillery beyond the border. Millions of people live there, more than half of South Korea's population. Seoul, with roughly 10 million residents. Incheon, with almost 3 million, and Suwon, over 1 million. All these cities are in that zone. And some estimates say that 48 hours of Pyongyang's artillery rage may kill over 100,000 in and around Seoul alone. But what kind of specific North Korean threat have we been mostly hearing about from the folks on TV?
That dramatic escalation in tensions with North Korea. Overnight, the regime defied President Trump with a new threat against the U.S. territory of Guam.
Chilling new warning comes as the rogue nation threatens to strike Guam, home to thousands of U.S. service members.
This is a regime that's trying to not only establish its power, but demonstrate its power.
Everyone's playing the Count Kim's missile range game, though even if it is capable of reaching the U.S. island in the Pacific, how realistic is the threat of a successful launch, a launch that would dodge America's AMD?
So with the offensive and defensive systems that the United States has, both in the fleets and in the Air Force, I would think it's a very low risk that it would be successful, particularly in Guam.
If you are a U.S. citizen on the coast of Guam, no doubt you're still pretty stressed. But hey, say that to South Koreans from somewhere near Seoul.
We're back with a Fox News alert. President Trump speaking on the phone with Chinese President Xi Jinping, discussing the North Korean threat. The two sides agree that the rogue nation should not have nuclear weapons and want a peaceful solution.
This comes as North Korea's military led a large state-run march through Pyongyang. Leaders saying they're ready to turn the U.S. mainland into ash.
President Trump also reaching out to the governor of Guam to reassure his people's safety as Kim Jong-un threatens to launch missiles near the island.
Here to comment on all of this right now is former U.S. Navy SEAL officer and founder of Blackwater USA, currently runs the Frontier Service Group, Eric Prince. Eric, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
I've looked at some of your comments on North Korea. You have some unconventional ideas about ways we could get at the Kim Jong-un regime that don't have to include the military necessarily.
Look, I think one of the aspects that should be pursued immediately is to figure out how to communicate with the North Korean people. That big rally you see pictures of, that was mandatory fun. Those people had to be there. You know, remember the wall in Eastern Europe, the Soviet wall came down because the people on the east side of the wall figured out what was on the west side of the wall. And so I would do call it a carpet bombing campaign of information, figuring out how to push information to those people, smuggling in cheap cell phones that they can watch videos, that they can communicate with each other on Bluetooth, and particularly videos of South Korea, of the rest of the world, of sporting events, of real estate listings, all the kind of things that they realize then that they'll be missing.
Eric, haven't we tried this? I mean, I've read reports about how we've attempted to, or we've been doing this for years, broadcast radio into North Korea. We've been trying to get information into that country. But I don't know if there's like a wall of brainwashing that keeps them from believing it. I don't know. I mean, haven't we been trying this?
Yes, but probably with lower tech. I mean, radio is probably 20 years ago compared to pushing cell phones in now. If you interview or read the interviews of defectors that have come out, it's when they realize that all of North Korea is a big lie, that they take serious risk of life to even try to escape. The more people that know what's on the other side of that wall, they will make a change.
Eric, what do we do with China? Because it is because of China that North Korea is surviving right now. I mean, China is really giving them their economy. What can President Trump do, maybe that he's not doing now, to really put them in a corner to actually act? Because they're the only ones, as you know, that can put this thing to bed.
Even for all the criticism of President Trump, that criticism, or sorry, the tough talk by the president is directed not just at Kim, but at the people around him, so that they realize if they continue with reckless behavior, it's not just Kim that's going to die, it's all of them in that circle. The Chinese pushed into those islands that they built in the South China Sea because they saw the empty suit of the Obama administration and no resistance. That wasn't even part of their strategic plan, but they saw the opening and they took it. In the same way the North Koreans have been pushing into basically an empty suit previous to this. So the president letting them know clearly what will happen to them if they threaten American territory is the right action. Eric, as for China, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead and finish.
As for China with trade, I think they are getting more serious about it. They've actually put 3 Army Corps on the northern border of North Korea. I think the welcome of North Korea has pretty much been worn out. I mean, Kim is a reckless guy using a weapon of mass destruction to kill his half-brother in an international airport is the straw that broke the camel's back.
You know, Eric, I got to ask you about Afghanistan as well. Multiple reports this week that the White House is potentially considering a plan to privatize some of that war, bringing in contractors. Obviously, your background extensive in that regard. What would that look like? Is it an attempt to end the war, maintain a stalemate, actually roll the Taliban back? What does it mean to privatize that fight?
As our longest war, 16 years, close to $1 trillion, thousands of American dead, tens of thousands wounded. How does this end? And the Pentagon keeps wanting to roll with largely the same strategy we've been doing for the last 16 years. I took a step back and kind of did a zero-based analysis and said, what do we need to do to support just the Afghan security forces to keep them upright? And that it was to embed mentors, contracted positions, long-term with the Afghan army, kind of as a structural support. With some air support and some governance support, you can do that for 8% of what you're spending now. There's already 26,000 contractors in Afghanistan. There's already 9,000 U.S. troops and 4,000 NATO troops. So this is not an expansion of contractors. This would rather lead to it would allow for a huge contraction of all those people to keep the Afghan forces upright, to put relentless pressure on terrorists, and to end the war in Afghanistan.
Which is certainly an outside-the-box idea. Eric Prince. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us this week. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.